7 days later, I ended up in the hospital. I was totally paralyzed from the waist down, and I had spinal surgery, learned to walk again. I
Oh
know.
my goodness.
And what they assume is that I just released so much tension that you had been carrying for so many years, and a
Oh my
disc broke
God.
in my back. It was the best worst thing to have ever happened. It was the scariest experience,
Wow.
and I joke about it in a sense of that was the universe saying you are not meant to be an insurance agent.
Hey guys, welcome to episode number 234 of the Game On Girlfriend podcast. Today I get to bring you Catherine Nichols, who is a ghostwriter extraordinaire and a woman on a mission to help you know and understand that your story matters. This is someone who has dedicated her life to making sure traumatic moments can transform not only the person that they happen to, but to other people once they've healed when they share their story. Catherine Nikkel is a writer and best-selling author specializing in ghostwriting books, blogs, and emails. She's authored 15 books, including memoirs, biographies, and business books, and thousands of blogs and emails for CEOs, entrepreneurs, and influencers. She believes that everyone has a story to tell, drawing upon her extensive 15-year background as a social worker. She empowers people to use their voice to make an impact within themselves, their relationships, and their communities. Catherine's the author of the Lightbulb Moments Journal, an Amazon bestseller. She's also been featured in numerous publications, including Forbes, Business Insider, New York Weekly, HuffPost, Buffer, Nonfiction Authors Association, Yahoo, Authority Magazine, and Thrive Global. I think you're really going to enjoy this conversation with Catherine. And if you have been thinking about whether or not you should tell your story, whether or not it's time for you to actually stop saying to yourself, I think I should write a book and actually start writing it, Catherine gets her clients from idea to first draft in 120 days. She tells us all about it inside this episode. So pop in those earphones and let's get to it. Catherine, welcome to the Game On Girlfriend podcast. I'm happy to have you here with us today. Yeah, I think this is going to be a topic. We start talking about ghostwriting. We start talking about writing at all and stories. And oh my gosh, I just watched like all the girlfriends, their ears are like perked up, like, wait, how do we do this? And there's someone who can help me do this. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. But I have to ask you before we jump into all of that, out of all the things that you could be doing, like there's so many career paths for all of us. There's so much that we could all be offering the world. Why, out of all the things, is this what you do?
Oh gosh. I mean, the simplest way to say it is I love people's stories, and I think people's stories need to be heard. And we get all caught up in our head about no, we shouldn't, yes, we should, who can we help? And my primary goal is really just to help people share more stories. And there's a quote I always refer to, and I still can't find who wrote it. So if anyone knows who it is, I'm happy to credit it. But it's resonated with me over the last 8 years. And it was our story could be the key to unlock someone else's prison. And I just feel that don't be selfish with our stories because it can really change someone's life. And here I am writing more people's stories. And I love that.
Oh my gosh, it's really beautiful. What do you think holds most people back? Like if they're like, I have this story, I want to share with the world, and then they're like, never mind, and they like run away. Like, what is that for people? What happens there, do you think?
I think it's twofold. You have sort of the technical piece as far as I'm not a great writer, this isn't going to make sense.
Mm,
Why would, that side of things. But then we have the vulnerable side because when we're sharing our stories, we're putting ourselves out there to be critiqued, to be judged, to be
mm,
shamed. But on the flip side, we're also there to be celebrated. So I think it's really just getting over that initial technical hump because anyone can write. There's always ways to figure that technical piece out. It's the other piece is that getting out there that I think is the toughest part for people. And I always say a blank page sucks, and it gives us way too much time to think about you know just all of the things, and we overthink it. And I think more than anything, that's what's holding people back.
got it. Yeah, I think that's right. And I agree. A blank page does suck. Oh my gosh, I'm going all the way. You just put me right back in college where I was like, I just want my head to disappear in the desk. No, thank you, please. Like so hard. And what do
Yeah.
you think it is for you? Because I can see you sort of like, Catherine, like being the guide next to people who are like, I think I have this story, but I'm scared. And I know people might critique me.
Hmm.
What is it like for you as the guide to that person in helping them pull that story out and like start to share it? What is that like for you? Do you feel like, do you get nervous? Do you get excited? Like what happens for you as you help people with this process?
Oh man, it's so exciting. And it's such a privilege and very humbling because you have people sharing with you moments that they may not have shared with anyone else or feelings that they may not have even really vocalized. And I
Mm.
do not take that for granted. So it's so uplifting. And it's, yeah, excitement, absolutely. Nervous. I mean, I'm human. I want to make sure I'm serving someone's story justice. We want to make sure that it's being heard in the way that they want to share it. But more than anything, it's exciting and super inspiring.
Yeah, I can get that. And you're leading to something that I think is really important. And we're kind of living in a time where the word trauma gets, I don't want to say thrown around, but I think we've been made more aware of what trauma is and how we as humans actually experience it. And
Hmm.
there's so much that we've absorbed throughout our lives without recognizing how traumatic the experiences actually may have been, right? There, we have this expectation that we're all sort of stoic and we've got it together and we can handle stuff. And now it's starting to come out that, like, yeah, you can, but there's healthy ways to do that and there's not healthy ways to do that, and actually be aware of your own behavior for other people. When you're working with somebody who's maybe been through a traumatic event, how do you help them tell that story in such a way that it's helpful for other people and still balancing their own need? I think kind of like what you just said, they're telling you stuff maybe they haven't told other people, but their own need for privacy, but also healing. I could imagine
Hmm.
that being a really delicate balance. How do you guys work together on that?
It can. And the very first thing that we do is talk about the vision. What is that ultimate? Any author I work with, or whether I'm writing for them, is what is that North Star? What are we really hoping to get out of this story? Because if we consider the galaxy, and there's millions of stars out there, and I look at them as all those little tiny stories because we're made up of millions and millions of stories,
Mm,
but not all those stars lead to the North. So when we think about the pieces of our story we want to tell, especially in the world of memoirs, it doesn't need to be a whole chronological, here is my whole life story. It's what are those inspiring and impactful moments in a slice of your life that are going to lead to that main North Star. Because before
mm,
we do anything together, we need to know what that is. And, the vision of the book isn't just, I want to see it in a bookstore or I want to, you
right.
know, have it in a library. It's who do you picture reading your story and what impact you want to make in their life. And when we think about who that person really is, that reader persona, who are they? What do they look like? What do they read? Where do they shop? All the things we do as business owners, ultimately, but who is that persona for that reader for you? And that's who we want to figure out. And that's how we're going to get there. Because otherwise, trauma has been thrown around, a lot of buzzwords that do get tossed. And that's okay. And it's just figuring out which ones are the moments that are going to make the most impacts. We don't need to share everything.
Mm,
Writing can be super cathartic. It's definitely a healing journey. And, we talk about you may write this book and you may decide not to publish. And that's okay
that's
because your
interesting.
goal was to write the book. So, however
Mm,
that feels when they're done, they have that author copy and they're thinking, do I really want to put it out there? We'll worry about that later because the primary goal at that moment is to share the story and who can we impact with that.
that is really cool. I would imagine that takes a lot of the pressure off. Yeah. Of
Yeah,
like, let's just do step one.
yeah, exactly.
I mean, there's 89 steps inside of step 1, but, like, let's
Yeah.
get this first big step done, yeah, and, like, how
Yeah,
does that happen often? Or, like,
yes.
someone's like, "Okay, that's it, I got it, I don't need to actually publish this," or is it that actually once they see it, they get so excited they can't wait to publish? How does that usually end up going? I'm so curious.
Oh, it's pretty 50-50. Especially
Really?
yeah, especially depending on the author. When I think about the clients I work with and, it's more of the book coaching capacity and guiding them through that process,
Uh,
a lot of them are entrepreneurs or they're executives or, in that type of space, they publish because the goal looks a little bit different. Where
okay,
when I'm
I
working
could
with,
see that.
I call them, yeah. So when I work with people that I call my cause authors and they're looking to write something for whether it be social justice or a social cause or those types of messages, that's about 50-50 if they publish or not.
Wow.
Yeah,
I'm so surprised by that. Because I would think to commit to doing it would be, it so moves the ball down the field, right? Like it's such a big step. Like it's like, okay, I'm gonna go and do this thing to then not publish it. I just find that fascinating, but maybe that is enough, right? That was enough to get the story out of your head and into your hands, as I like to say. Yeah,
exactly. And they can publish anytime. You may
that's true.
decide 5 years down the road that I'm ready. And because a lot of times, too, depending again on the authors, especially when we're writing of, the whole cliche of turning our mess into a message and who can we, change with this. But, sometimes we're still healing. And it's really tough to publish and put yourself out there
Mm,
where your end result, for whatever that means, may not be the same in 5 years.
mm,
So
mm.
their main goal is let's just get the book and
Mm.
then decide the rest from there.
I can really get that actually. I think it sounds very similar, in the speaking industry too. And obviously writing and speaking go so hand in hand. We always say share
Hmm.
from wounds, not no, we share from scars, not from wounds.
Hmm.
That we wait until something's healed fully for us before we start sharing. So I could see that actually being part of the healing process, but then it's like hold on to it for a hot second while everything
Hmm.
settles. Yeah,
Yeah,
I could get that. Do you have a sense when you're working with somebody how to help them make that decision, or do they tend to do that on their own?
totally on their own.
Yeah.
I become more of that confidant of let's talk it through and what do you think or am I ready? But the decision ultimately, it just all of a sudden makes sense. It all of a sudden is like
Mm,
there's no waffling when we get to the end. It's either I'm ready or I'm not.
I got it. Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense to me. I could really see that because you put so much work into actually I almost want to say birthing it, right? Like we got it out. Yeah. It's like all this work. We're pretty clear on what this is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so neat, Catherine. That must be such a fun experience to do with people. And the other thing I know that you talk a lot about is our transferable skills, right? That there's so much that we can take into different areas of life, different career paths. Can you say more about what you see transferable skills are and how we can really, sort of tap into those as we move through our lives?
Yeah. So if I kind of throw it back a little bit, before I started ghostwriting, I was in social work for 15 years. And I worked with youth that were in a population of gang violence, human
Oh,
trafficking,
wow.
prostitution, addictions, mental health. And I loved that career. But, the burnout rate, they say, is 2 years. And I figured I 7X'd that.
Wow.
And I was just ready to make a change. And I didn't
Mm,
have any idea actually what that was going to be. And
mm.
I, so crazy. As a social work, no one is in social work for money. It's really passion. And I thought, I'm seeing a good friend of mine really crush it in insurance. I've never chased money. I'm going to go be an insurance agent. So ridiculous.
Wow.
And I know. And I thought, what have I got to lose? I mean, it was scary, but it was either now
Yeah.
or never. So I quit my social work career. And a lot of that was not so much burnout, but it's the red tape, it's the politics. I worked in nonprofits. Sometimes we had funding. And, when you're working with tough populations, when you are excited, you finally get them into a program and then the program doesn't exist anymore because of funding. And,
Mm.
it's messy. And so, anyways, I quit. And 7 days later, I ended up in the hospital. I was totally paralyzed from the waist down. And I had spinal surgery, learned to walk again. I
Oh
know.
my goodness.
And what they assume is that I just released so much tension that you had been carrying for so many years and a
Oh my
disc broke
God.
in my back. It was the best worst thing to have ever happened. It was the scariest experience.
Wow.
And I joke about it in a sense of that was the universe saying, you are not meant to be an insurance agent. Like, don't chase the money. You've led with your heart your entire career. Let's do something different. And I'd always been writing, just whether it be blogging for myself or things like that. And I thought I could probably really do this.
Mm,
And getting slowly initially into the content writing space and then more so into the book space, I realized that there were so many transferable skills from social work to ghostwriting. Everything from not needing credit, because, you know, you don't get credit as a social worker, you don't need
right.
it as a ghostwriter, you don't want it. The interview process, especially the authors I work with, it's like this underlying confidentiality. It's like you used
Mm,
to be a social worker, you get it.
Yeah.
It feels more comfortable.
Mm,
It feels like they're not going to tell me something that I've probably never heard before. I don't have that same shock that naturally some people do.
mm, mm.
And, I just started realizing there were so many things. So when I looked at, if I can go from social work to ghostwriting, what do people have in their lives right now that could be transferable into something that, would feed them a little bit more, whether it be their heart or what have you.
That's really amazing. I mean, I'm sorry, I'm a little bit stunned at the moment. So that was so much information, Catherine, and it was all so important. But one of my closest friends is a social worker, and I really know what the amount of, I just even want to say weight, like just the sheer weight of caring for people at that level when there is so much going on that needs attention, right? That is a skill set that
Hmm.
very few people have and that they can carry it for very long, right? Like
Yeah.
it's really significant. And so to carry the confidentiality, the ability to be with people in their darkest
Hmm.
moments, right? And things are happening that like nobody should ever have to go through, but people go through. I could really see how that would be incredibly supportive as a writer to bring that skill set in. It's amazing. And now
Absolutely.
I have to
Yeah.
ask you about your spine though. Are you okay? Like, did it all just get healed?
Yep.
What happened?
Essentially, I mean, there'll be permanent nerve damage, so about 70% of no feeling in one leg. It's almost eh, like a severe neuropathy, if you will. They had to fuse the spine. We were able to get the disc out, and yeah, it was quite a journey. It was my own healing, my own
Yeah,
healing
I was
journey.
gonna say, my gosh, there's such a story in that alone right there, right? Like I woke up
Yeah,
and I still only have 70% of feeling in my leg. Let me tell you what happened. Like, oh my God, what a great story. Like, wow. It's so
yeah,
incredible. But I bet that just gives people who work with you such confidence to know they're working with someone who gets what a traumatic story can look like and how it
yeah.
can help. If someone's listening right now, and I have a feeling they are, and they're like, I really want to write a book. I really want to do this. And they're like, but I can do it by myself. What would you say to somebody about the importance of having a guide with you as you write?
Oh, it's a bit of a loaded question. One, it's someone that holds you accountable
Mm.
because writing a book is hard. Even as someone we just started my 16th book
Oh
with an
my
author,
goodness.
and it's hard. We
Mm.
all face that same piece, and thankfully, it's my career. I love it. I'm able to push through those moments. But if that's not our specialty or if that's not our thing, then so many people we meet, they're like, "Oh, someone told me I should write a book. I'm going to write a book." But then we're still telling that same story to ourselves 1, 2, 3, 5 years later. And having someone that can really just get you on the right path,
Mm.
even if it's just working through that outline, that constructive feedback, not criticism, because that's weird. Constructive criticism sounds like such a odd thing to me, but just someone that's going to keep you on your deadlines and help you make sense of it. Because when we're so close to our story, we miss the details that a reader would need. There's a lot
Oh,
of
that's
times we work
interesting.
with people and I'm like, oh, who were you talking about here? And they're like, oh, so and so. And I said, that person should probably be in the book then. So it's really just someone that keeps you on track.
Mm.
And the authors that I work with, they have their book manuscript from blank page to manuscript in 120 days.
Wow.
And yeah, and it feels ambitious, but you know, multiple dozen clients have proven the process to be right. And it's really just
Wonderful.
having someone that's going to keep you accountable along the way. And
Mm.
that's, I think, the biggest thing because, stories are tough. And when we're still going through that healing process, or what is our learning lesson? If we look at more of the business life hybrid books, what do you want someone to get out of the story?
Mm.
So it's really being able to help someone pull that out because I
Yeah.
can put myself, if I'm your demographic, or let's pretend I'm your demographic, I want to know this, or I need to know this, and this is missing. So it's just helpful to have another set of eyeballs on your work.
Yeah.
And I think that's the biggest thing.
I can get that. I could totally get that. I think for all of us, it's one of the reasons I love being a coach, right? We have such a hard time seeing our own stuff. We can see everyone else's, but we have such
Hmm.
a hard time seeing our own stuff. And it sounds like actually sharing a story that way to try to be the third person on your own reading it is very
Hmm.
challenging. I could get that. And
Hmm.
so having somebody else sort of look at it with you to say, ah, I wouldn't have known that. Or that, when you said that, like, oh, that's a detail the reader needs that we take for granted.
Hmm.
Yeah, I could see that being a really, really important piece. And I have one more question for you that just sort of came to
Mhm.
mind while you were talking, if that's okay. And
Of
that
course.
is like, what do you wish more people knew about writing their own stories? Like, what do you wish people could get that maybe they don't get until they're either in the process or they're completed with the process? What do you think people need to know?
That their story matters.
Mm, love that.
I know, and it feels so simple to say it, but sometimes we just need people to tell us that.
Mhm.
And that's again why I lean back on that quote. And, I think about too, when I was going through my own healing journey with my back, someone had said to me, you know what, Catherine, your worst day is someone's best day. And if you can take some of your story and just inspire someone else, again, those cliches, those that trauma to triumph, people are so inspired by that. And people deserve to hear your story.
I love that. I'm just going to let that settle for a hot second. That is really good. All right, this was amazing. And Catherine, I understand you have a free gift for our listeners as well. Do you want to tell a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So I believe that the book writing process, 70% of that is made in the book outline. Because when you're successful in writing a solid outline, it's almost like you can take that outline and turn it right into your first draft. And
Ah,
I just think that that just takes the load off because it's really chunking it. It's making you think about, my whole framework is it's an acronym VOICE, which we start with vision, then outline, implement, clean up, evaluate.
love.
And so the free gift is the exact outline that I use when I work with my clients, and that I still use myself when I'm writing a book. So it's on my website, it's totally free. And just, I think, a great starting point for people that are thinking about writing their book or they're ready to write their book, that it's just an opportunity to really go through and make it happen.
That's incredibly valuable. Catherine, that is a super generous gift. You guys, if you are watching on YouTube, we will have the link to that outline underneath this video. If you're listening in, the link will be in the show notes. Catherine, if someone's listening and they're like, oh my dear heavens, get me some Catherine, where can people go to find you?
My website absolutely is my name, catherinenickel.com. And just about any social media handle, it feels like, and it's always my name. So I'm always happy to connect with people, even if it's just to, bounce an idea or have someone tell you that your story matters.
I love it. Catherine, thank you so much for spending time with our girlfriends today. I really appreciate it. And I think we may have actually inspired a few people to start sharing their stories today. Thank you so much for that because I know they do matter. And thank you for the work that you're doing.
Thank you so much.